Scorsese then discussed the struggles of working out how to do the film, what methods to implement. He said, "The possibility of them playing younger in makeup you could do, but as time went on, we lost that opportunity. There was talk about shooting it in such a way that the flashbacks would obscure the characters." The Empire article then points out that at one point, when they were getting really desperate, someone mentioned that perhaps they should lose De Niro, Pacino and Pesci for the younger scenes. This part of the interview is really interesting, showing how the Irishman evolved over time and how they had struggled to find a way to make it work. It really does add strength to De Niro's comments over the years that they were working on it, and were working on it very seriously, and it wasn't just a case of the film being on the back burner for years with no one wanting to make it. Scorsese saying that the making of the film with the actors in makeup for the younger scenes was considered, and this would most likely have been the best way to make the film. It would have kept the costs down, hopefully someone would have eventually picked it up, and in 2007, De Niro and Pacino didn't look too bad, and they could have easily been made to look a few decades younger, although probably not as much as in their 20s, which is the youngest De Niro will be in The Irishman, but I'm sure Scorsese would have found a way to make it work. But as the man himself said, too much time had passed and it was no longer an option once they began the ball rolling properly. The next option suggested would be to obscure the actors' faces for the younger scenes, but I think we'll all agree that that would just not work at all. 2 hours of looking at the back of De Niro, Pacino and Pesci's heads? No way. And it would be too self-conscious, and looking at the content of the Irishman script, there's just no way it would have worked. The third option was to use different actors for the younger scenes, but again, anyone who's read the script will know that would just have not worked. It's not like in Once Upon a Time in America where there's a section where they're all really old, and then another section where they're all middle-aged, and then more flashbacks when they are kids. 3 completely separate periods. This movie constantly jumps back and forward from their ages of, say, 50, then 20, then 40, then 60, and even 80. You just can't make that work with different actors playing the same character. Conversations went on and on until 2013, in which a taped reading of The Irishman's script was set up in De Niro's office in order to entice potential investors. The Empire piece confirms that at the very least, those who attended included De Niro, Pacino, Scorsese, Pesci and Harvey Keitel. Producer Emma Killinger-Koskov recounts, "It was around 2 p.m, definitely post-lunch. None of them are morning guys. Total goosebumps. I just sat and was awed for the whole read-through and several days after." Apparently, even screen legend Al Pacino was nervous. According to Bobby Cannavale, who worked with Scorsese on Boardwalk Empire and had signed up to play mobster Skinny Razor DiTullio, Pacino asked Cannavale to come with him to the script reading. Cannavale said, "Al said, 'Can we ride down together? I'm a little nervous. I've never worked with Marty before.'" Cannavale went on to say, but he just destroyed it in that reading. This was put to Pacino, now 79, and he remembered, saying, "It was quite apparent to everyone that there was a real film there. The atmosphere in that room was the opposite of toxic. It was full of life." De Niro added, "It read better than when you read it on a page, and when I watched it after, I was pleasantly surprised." It sounds really awesome that all these guys were in the same room doing a script reading of this historic project all those years ago, and even back then they could all feel this was something special. However, it looked like they had failed in their original intention with regards to the script reading. As Rosenthal recounts, "We got everyone in the room, but afterwards I believed that the tape was all we'd ever have of this project." The Empire magazine then tells us that in a 2012 edition, Joe Pesci told them, "Talking about something you want to do is like stepping on your dick." For The Irishman, De Niro broke that rule. He said, "I'm very careful about announcing a film. I used to be superstitious. I wouldn't say anything, 'cause you'll talk it away or whatever. But I felt with this one, it was different. We didn't go out making speeches, but we kept putting it out there that we intended to make it." And I'm sure this is something anyone who's been waiting for the film for years can attest to. For me personally, I used to get pumped with excitement every time De Niro mentioned the movie every few years or so, but after a while it felt like he was the only one going on about it. I remained hopeful though, and now with this interview we can see that it was an intentional decision by De Niro to keep the film in both the public and potential investors' minds to drum up interest. And it's a good idea. I mean, sometimes word of mouth or a few test shots getting hype are enough for a film to get the green light. Look at Deadpool. De Niro was determined to get The Irishman made, but whilst the two waited for something to be worked out, Scorsese went and made Hugo, and The Wolf of Wall Street, and Silence, and the actors got older and older. Paramount had signed a deal with Scorsese which included making The Irishman, but at this point they were still unsure how they were going to make it, if they were going to make it at all. It was midway through shooting Silence that Scorsese was approached by Pablo Hellman, who offered him his de-aging technology. Now they finally had a way to make the film work, but as I'm sure you know, this sent the budget skyrocketing and saw Mexican financer Fabrica de Cine drop out, Paramount drop out, and SDX Entertainment drop out. As we all know, out of nowhere Netflix swooped in and saved the day, saying they'd pay for the whole thing, and thus The Irishman had its go-ahead. Fast forward to September 2017, the film began shooting with a scene with De Niro and Pesci. Pesci, who had long since retired and was busy golfing and breeding racehorses, is thought to have rejected the film over 50 times, and Scorsese wasn't quick to deny the rumour. He said, in his trailer he turned it down. As he came out of the trailer, eventually, he turned it down. While we were shooting a scene, he turned it down. That's part of the performance. He has to feel right. He could not do anything that would be false. And then De Niro chimed in with mentioning that it was difficult to get Pesci to agree to be in the film, and he mentioned the wise words that he said to his friend Pesci. He doesn't want to act too much or anything, but I said, we gotta do this together. Who knows if there'll be anything else after this? Pesci himself spoke of how Scorsese tried coaxing him with the promise of this being a new kind of role, a powerful one. Marty told me that it's not going to be like organised crime figures I've played in the past. My character always remains in control. He has a quiet power. As if a Scorsese picture being filmed with De Niro and Pesci side by side wasn't enough, a few months into the shoot, Al Pacino turned up, and he said, I came onto this movie like jumping on a moving train. I even said it. Whoa, I'm coming. Hold on there. But it immediately felt like territory where I belong. It's set in a world that Marty of course excels in, but he's looking at it here through a different lens. It's a different energy, and there's something very moving about these relationships and what happens. Empire then gives us some quotes from some of the supporting cast, highlighting how nervous and excited everyone was to be working on this historic project. Ray Romano, who plays the lawyer Bill Buffalino, said, I really was a wreck. After every take, I would go over and Bobby Cannavale would hold me because I was so nervous. Stephen Graham, who played the volatile mobster Tony Pro, said, Fuck man, I phoned my missus from the Winnebago and said, I'm shitting myself. I've been in the toilet about 7 times. I'm spraying deodorant everywhere, but my guts are all over the place. She told me to pull myself together, that I'd earned the right to be there, that I should just enjoy myself. And she was right, as most missuses are. It's actually really sweet that all these top-tier actors were so nervous and uncomfortable at the prospect of working with greats. Pacino being nervous to work under Scorsese highlights his humbleness and down-to-earthness, and reinforces how much of a titan of a director that Scorsese is. People clamour over each other to get a chance to work with Scorsese, and Michael Corleone, Tony Montana himself, needs a wingman to help him meet Scorsese. And then you have Stephen Graham, who played Al Capone and was terrifying in films like This Is England, having his stomach and nerves fail him. Empire's piece then mentioned some details that I was not familiar with. Apparently The Irishman wasn't the longest shoot of Scorsese's career. That honour still belongs to Hugo, but The Irishman does come close at 108 days. There were 117 locations, 319 scenes, complex camera movements, and one particularly difficult night at -10 degrees Celsius where taxis had to be pushed into a harbour by the actors.